and Trump, but Hillary's camp and the FBI. Ignoring that would be grossly negligent. All right, we got some breaking news here, Jesse. From Judicial Watch, I believe, the new Justice Department records show strong support. Andrew Weissmann, who was a Mueller deputy, showing strong support for, what's her name, Betsy Yates? Sally Yates. It's her refusal to. I like Sally or Betsy.
Same thing.
Good
breaking news. There.
Her refusal to endorse the travel ban, and he said, "My deepest respect to you. I'm so proud of you." And that's a person working for Mueller.
Yeah, so he praised her for defying Trump's travel ban, which is funny because the Supreme Court by 7-2 margin just upheld it as constitutional. So both of those two individuals are partisan and they're out of step with the Constitution.
Hey, hold on. They didn't uphold it as constitutional. They said you can put it in place while it's
in the
reviewed.
Middle of my brilliant commentary, just let it slide and you can take it up with me when I'm finished.
All right, go right ahead.
It's always correct.
All right.
And they fought hard, the team Mueller, from keeping this communication from the public. Now, Weissmann is an extremely controversial individual. He has a reputation for rule breaking, for withholding evidence, for threatening and intimidating witnesses. And I think the Houston bar called him a madman. Now, the two major prosecutions of Wall Street firms, Arthur Andersen and Merrill Lynch, he completely botched. One was overturned by the Supreme Court 9-0. The other was overturned by the Fifth District Court of Appeals. So the guy has a track record of prosecutions and convictions being overturned. He's maxed out to the Obama campaign, and he's a partisan pitbull. He doesn't belong anywhere near an investigation. Now, Mueller also, another investigator, Jeanine Ray, maxed out to the Clinton campaign, representing the Clinton Foundation, represented Hillary personally when she was fighting the email thing. So just imagine if the shoe was on their foot, Gutfeld. And you have prosecutors investigating Hillary, and they're Trump donors, or they worked for the Trump organization, and they're sending text messages about crooked Hillary, make America great again. You think the Democrats would take that lying down? No.
I'd hope they have a pair of shoes, because I don't want her tripping. You know, Kimberly, there's a lot of pieces of information here that may seem small, but they add up to a pattern of bias. You have emails with these emails with a mistress, you get overlooking Huma and Cheryl. They're adjusting language to help Hillary. That's a lot of stuff.
No, it is. And what you're talking about is aggregating this information. When you put it together, it makes quite a compelling case that there was a very much a lack of objectivity, that there was inherent bias in the investigation. And what's shameful is that they would put people that are so partisan, that have made actual financial contributions, and have them be part of an investigation of someone that they do not support, and have gone out of their way to put their money where their mouth is and say, okay, I'm against this person. Then plus the language, the text messages, the emails. And Sarah Carter told Sean Hannity last night that through her sources, there are more emails coming out to show the bias here, and that they were really kind of out to get Flynn and President Trump, and then candidate Trump at the time. So this is exactly what you don't want from anybody involved in an investigation or, injustice. That's the problem here. So you can't just blow it off and say, oh, well, who knows? No, when you add it up, it means something significant.
Yeah. Katie, this is collusion. And how far does it go? Probably to the top.
Well, and that opens up all kinds of questions about the Clinton email investigation, which we've all had sitting around this table questioning what the extensive nature of that investigation was. Why is it that the inner circle that played around Hillary Clinton was able to have immunity? Why is it that Cheryl Mills was allowed to be both a witness in the case and also the attorney for Hillary Clinton? And one thing that jumped out at me today is that the Justice Department is not commenting on any of this. So it must be a very awkward place for Jeff Sessions to be in, for his staff to be in, because they're the ones who have to answer to this as well. And they have a problem on their hands when it comes to special counsel. And Rod Rosenstein, who appointed the special counsel, is the one who's going to have to really look at this and go, we do have a conflict of interest here. And it's not that you can't have political opinions. Washington, D.C. is a one-stop shop for politics. That's what people do there.
Sure.
The problem is the conflict of interest. And clearly, there has been one on multiple occasions in a variety of cases.
Imagine, though, for what you're saying, if President Trump wasn't elected and Sessions wasn't the AG, can you imagine that you might not ever hear about this?
But here's the fun part, Juan.
Collusion.
You got to love this. if Strzok hadn't struck those words, she wouldn't have been the nominee. And you might have had a President Sanders, and you would have been laughing for the rest of the year on the 5.
Oh, well,
yeah,
let me just tell you, Gregory, I laugh a lot on the 5 because I hear some silly stuff.
Crying.
I hear really silly
Shock,
stuff.
chuckle, and awe.
Exactly. That was excellent.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. But let me just tell you the news today,
Yes.
which is, of course, you're not going to hear it here, folks. But the news here
You're
is
telling them.
that Robert Mueller has now sought documents from Deutsche Bank
Fake
related
news.
to. Guess who? Donald Trump's
that
finances.
true?
That's not true. His attorney, no, Donald Trump's attorney came out today and said the subpoena had not been
John
issued.
Roberts says that's incorrect.
And let's get some
Wait,
more
so do
news.
we
Major
need to know
Garrett.
if that's true or not?
Okay,
A producer should let us know.
Well,
Producers just said, according to
Wait.
John Roberts, it's not
John
true.
Roberts says it's not true.
Well, okay.
How
here's
dare
a second-
you?
Major Garrett.
How
Here's a
dare
second
you?
thing. Here's a second thing to tell you, right?
Fake news.
Yes.
Guess what? That one
You're
of the
0 for
guys,
1.
one of the guys working with Manafort had ties to the Russian Secret Service, right? Again, we're getting closer. But
Closer
guess
to
what?
what?
Guess what?
You
Now,
don't
what
know.
you hear here is, oh, it's all about some silliness with an FBI agent. Guess what? They have opinions. They have political beliefs. Which among us wasn't tweeting, Gregory, in the midst of the presidential
He's not an FBI
debates?
agent.
Oh, I know somebody
Thank
that was
God.
tweeting in the midst of the
But
presidential
I wasn't
debates.
interviewing
It
Cheryl
doesn't
and
matter.
Boomer.
You can do your job. You can come in here and
No.
do your job, and then just like Mr. Strzok, do his
Okay,
job.
Juan, well, here's my question then. Because the entire reason why Jeff Sessions, as the Attorney General of the United States, recused himself from the Russia investigation is because he said there was a conflict of interest because of his involvement in the campaign.
Yeah.
Would it be okay with you for him not to have recused himself? Because he might have political opinions about Donald Trump, but he can still do his job even though he was on the campaign.
No. He was personally involved, Katie. In other words, he's even had to come back
So
and
there's a double
explain
standard.
that he
I
wasn't
got it.
lying, but he
So
simply
it's different
forgot.
for different people.
No.
I got it.
He was actually involved. This agent had a political opinion and was doing his job as an agent. You guys now are attacking law enforcement when it comes, but not.
You've never
you're
attacked law enforcement.
Ron, you're trying to shift the argument away from the obvious collusion between Hillary's campaign and the
What?
FBI.
There is no such thing. You're trying to shift this away from Donald Trump and the fact that after the Flynn plea and admission of guilt to lying, that as you heard from Micah, oh my gosh, I think the noose is tightening.
Well, no, the noose is.
Are we allowed to say the noose is tightening, or is that like a microaggression?
I don't know.
Or is it a banned phrase?
Yeah.
Banned on people who've died by lynching?
I have no
I
idea.
don't know. It sounds really.
But here's the thing, Jesse. The point is, the noose is tightening. They're actually lowering the bar for what they want. First, they wanted collusion. Now they're looking for obstruction of justice. They're probably not going to get that either.
They've been investigating collusion for 2 years. If they had found collusion, it would have leaked by now. They haven't found collusion, so now they're trying to build an obstruction case.
That's what they do,
Probably try to impeach this guy. Now, Juan, let me just go back to something you said.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem if someone's donating to a Democrat or donating to Republicans and they're the lead prosecutor going after a gun manufacturer or a large corporation or through an Indian reservation or something like that. This is politics. This is so much more serious than, just some sort of corporate prosecution or Wall Street prosecution. They're going after a political campaign. The winner of that political campaign is now the president, and prosecutors are donating to her opponent and giving different treatment to different people based on their politics.
No.
That alone raises the question of, has the
You just
integrity
went
of
overboard.
the investigation been compromised?
You went
And has
way
the team been compromised? There's an old saying,
look,
Juan.
I know you love
are who you
conspiracy.
hang out with.
Oh, please.
That would make Mueller
Oh, is that
a
right?
Trump hater.
Oh,
Because he's
so what does that?
stacked
What does
with
that make me?
With a
I
bunch
hang
of
out
Trump
with you
haters.
guys. These
Yeah,
are my
I don't think we
friends.
hang out
Oh,
after
my
the
God.
show.
No, we hang out. Okay, so that makes me therefore
revealed.
some wild-eyed conspiracy theorist like you? No, I don't
Juan,
think so.
Let's just say, I'm not sure we're friends. We're
Okay.
colleagues.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh my
But I'm hanging out here.
You're like a mean girl, Jesse.
I'm
guys are on
sorry.
your way.
Juan
It's
brings
all
out the best
but
in me.
But I'm going to tell you, it doesn't make a difference.
I think it
Jesse.
does.
Wait till
I
you-
just
You know
made a
why?
great example.
You know why? Do you
If
think
there
it
had
makes a
been Trump
difference?
donors investigating Hillary, you would have
What?
raised hell.
I'm sure there were, because guess what?
Oh, you
got,
sure there?
You got FBI
Are you
agents
sure, Juan?
of all political stripes.
I'm not so sure there were.
Oh,
Tired
I'm
of
sure there
guessing
were.
what? I'm tired of guessing what?
Guess what?
Guess what?
Guess what?
Guess what? We're going to go to a tease, all right?
And
Guess
you're,
what,
you're
Juan?
not an
A
FBI
tease.
agent.
A tease.
So.
Armageddon up next.
Wasn't that just it?
Pelosi's idea of the end times, the Republican tax bill.
It is the end of the road. This health care, the debate on health care is life, death. this is Armageddon. This is a very big deal because you know why? There's really a very hard way to come back from this. They take us further, more deeply into debt. What can you do but raise taxes?
Yes, more fear-mongering from the top Democrat in the House, and she's not the only one in her party using scare tactics to condemn the sweeping legislation. Here's Obama economic advisor Larry Summers.
When people lose health insurance, they're less likely to get preventive care. They're more likely to defer health care they need, and ultimately they're more likely to die. My piece explains why an estimate that thousands will die as a consequence of this bill is actually a very conservative estimate.
No matter what Republicans propose, it's going to lead to death and destruction, Greg.
Yes, without hyperbole, Democrats would have nothing. If you take up any issue that isn't immediately dangerous, like the Trump election, climate change, tax reform, the debate starts with them saying that the opposition are evil killers, right, taking us down to the path of the apocalypse, except when it comes to ISIS or terror. Mm-hmm. It's the most amazing contrast. If you actually flip the reactions, so the concern over taxes is actually a concern over terror, for once, liberals would be right. So that what does this tell you? Liberals only feel outrage if they can direct it at the Marxist, progressive, approved enemy, which is the West. So when it's climate change or the election or taxes, you are evil because you are the West. You can never say anything about ISIS or terror in the same vein.
So Republicans are more deadly than ISIS.
Exactly.
Katie, is that what you were getting? It's like the boy that cried wolf, though. How long can they keep this up?
This is such a lazy argument that they've made. I mean, remember the ad that Nancy Pelosi's allies ran with Paul Ryan pushing an old grandma off a cliff when they were trying to do Medicare reform, excuse me. I mean, this is an argument they've been using forever. And now I understand, after hearing from Larry Summers, why the Obama economy was so bad. And for him to suggest that because people are forced to buy Obamacare, that they somehow have health care is a complete and utter lie. The insurance under Obamacare doesn't necessarily provide you any health care, first of all, because it's too expensive. And second of all, because there's a few, not enough doctors now, and the demand for health care has gone through the roof as a result. Waiting times for health care have increased. Rural hospitals have closed. So this idea now that we're allowing people to get out of an entitlement program, which is Obamacare, of course is terrifying to Democrats, because that means that people can spend their own money and buy their own health care, opening up a whole nother market, which is an indictment of government-run health insurance.
You know what really killed people, Juan?
Tell me.
The Obama VA scandal. People actually died there. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Well, let me just tell you, Katie, I think, in fact, what we know is that there's more people covered by insurance because
they're forced to buy it, Juan.
Oh, I'm just saying more people have health insurance, which is good for us all.
Because the government tells them they're going to be fined if they can't buy it.
Let me just say it created a system that allows us all as Americans to have fewer dollars imposed on us as when you and I buy, because we're employed, and those who don't have the money for health insurance to get health insurance so that they don't impose a burden on the rest of us. This is good for America, good for the healthcare system, keeps costs down.
It's horrible.
Has no effect on health.
It does. But let me just say something. If you don't have health insurance, try to be healthy.
There have been studies that show.
Okay,
people don't have health insurance under Obamacare because it's too expensive
let me just get back to what Greg was talking about, though, because it seems to me you ignore something that Republicans had endorsed for years, which is the Joint Commission on Taxation, the official scorekeeper of Congress, saying that everyone who makes less than $75,000 is going to see a tax increase under this in 10 years. You don't notice that, oh my gosh, Republicans have always been deficit hawks. And what do we see from the official scorekeepers? 1.5 trillion additional costs added to our deficit. So it seems to me like you don't have to say Armageddon. I think she's trying to be hyperbolic, because she's trying to make.
So you agree with me?
But I think she is right when she says, and by the way, most Americans, guess what? Most Americans agree this is a bad bill.
All right,
I'm not crazy about the bill, but I'm not setting my hair on fire.
So why are you over there defending?
I'm condemning the behavior which is hypocritical. They don't act act this way when it comes to existential threats.
Oh, I see.
But then they exaggerate.
You're picking on the fact that Democrats criticize it, even though you don't like the bill yourself.
No, that they vow that the people involved in it are murderous monsters and everybody's going to die.
But Juan agrees with what you said.
I know.
You said of their, very liberal use of hyperbole, and then he said the language was hyperbolic. So
yes, I agree with that.
You're agreeing
you
with
live in a hyperbolic chamber.
I know. That's why he looks so good.
But I'm just surprised that Greg would. Right. I mean, the audience must have come away from Greg's monologue thinking, "Oh, Greg thinks this is a great bill. Republicans doing the right things. Oh, those Democrats."
Only you were confused, Juan.
Oh,
Kimberly,
we were
can
all
you take us away?
Yes, please, Calgon, take us away because this is getting crazy. Americans are very tired of this language, of the semantic gymnastics that the Democrats and the libs put forward to scare them, throwing Granny off the cliff or this or that. It's enough already for them, and especially because they are seeing the impact of Obamacare having literally pulled dollars out of their pockets that they wanted to be able to have for their families to be able to use for other things that they needed. Instead, what's happened here under the Obamacare is that people were being forced and penalized and basically tied to a chair and say, give us your money to pay for the uninsured, et cetera. How is that something that should be allowed? So now we're trying to improve on that. And yes, there's going to be some bumps along the way, but it is overall going to be an improvement and better for the working class Americans.
And if you look at the bill and the contents of the bill, Democrats have been arguing for decades that they are the champions of the middle class. Where here we are with an actual piece of legislation that is going to give the middle class a tax cut across the board. And guess what? People in the higher tax brackets are going to get a tax hike. So why are Democrats complaining about it?
Wow, I hope
Scott Benson and Charlie Kirk agree with you.
Go look for yourself at independent analysis. Nobody thinks that the rich and corporations are taking a tax hike.
You know what I think was Armageddon? The Obamacare website.
Oh, yeah.
John Conyers is out of Congress for now. There's a twist. Up next.
Today, John Conyers became the first member of Congress to give up his seat amid a national reckoning on sexual harassment. He was facing intense pressure to resign after multiple misconduct claims surfaced over the last 2 weeks. He announced his retirement on a radio show this morning, but still denied the allegations against him.
This goes with the issue of politics, the game of politics, which we're in. We take what happens, we deal with it, we pass on and move on forward as we keep going, trying to make as much as we can of this tremendous opportunity that's been given me for so long.
The 88-year-old says his legacy will continue through his children and endorsed his son, John Conyers III, for his vacant seat. Greggins.
Is this royalty or a republic? I mean, we don't know anything about his son. The apple may not far from the underwear. Oh. So I don't know. I don't think it's right for him to keep it in the family. I don't think you should be allowed to do that. But by the way, comparing this to all of the other revelations in the hitting media, politics, entertainment, he's getting off pretty easy. I mean, he's 88 and he's retiring. It's not like he's losing his career at the age of 40 or 35 or 50.
You're right.
I mean, this is not a tragedy. He's 88 years old. Go spend some time, that other things that don't involve changing your clothes in front of people.
You know what? It's pretty much tragic when a guy who's the longest serving member and who is revered by many in the black community, but certainly in Michigan, ends up in this kind of, his whole legacy, I think, is tarnished.
Do you think?
And hurt, and I think that's why today he said in terms of the son, and I don't know the son either, but he said, my legacy will continue through my, because the guy understands that he will be remembered in these terms and not as the guy, for example, who introduced the legislation to honor Dr. King with a birthday, national holiday for the birthday. That's damaging.
Yeah, it's a good lesson for lawmakers on Capitol Hill and for men in big, powerful positions. They do a lot of good things throughout their life. That is true. But when it comes to this kind of behavior, you might get away with it for 10 years or 20 years, but eventually it will catch up to you. That is exactly what happened now. My question is, going into the 2018 midterm elections, how are Democrats going to play this politically? Are they now going to be the party that takes the high road on sexual harassment and assault claims and try to have some kind of standard for lawmakers when they are accused or when there are credible accusations that they step down? Is Al Franken going to be someone who is also pressured into maybe stepping aside in a safe-ish Democrat seat? 2018 is going to be interesting to see how this narrative about this issue plays out in politics, because as we've seen with Republicans with the Alabama Senate race, they've chosen a different way of handling the issue, right? So going into the midterms,
Let me hear that. I want to hear that.
They've just chosen, based on how Democrats have reacted for 30 years to sexual assault claims like Bill Clinton, just double down, deny, drag the victims through the mud. They've taken that playbook and used it and said, we're not going to give up our power because Democrats never do. And if we're all going to be in the dirt on this thing, well, then we're going to have our own people who are going to vote for an agenda doing that voting. Whereas maybe we'll see a change.
So you think it's comparable? You think that what Roy Moore is accused of doing?
I'm not comparing them. I'm just saying generally
because
the
I don't see any. I don't think it's comparable what Al Franken or John Conyers touching a woman is with in terms of Roy Moore asking 14-year-olds to take their clothes off.
Okay, but that is an allegation.
That's what I said.
Right, but there's an investigation going forward on it.
What about there's more
in
women
these other
every
instances,
day,
there's
Kimberly.
Photographic evidence. There's money paid. So my point is you have to have due process with each situation. We're not trying to say, okay, this is pretty bad, this is really bad, this is so-so. It's just, okay, has there been a settlement paid? Okay, is there photographic evidence or otherwise, or eyewitnesses, recipient to the time when the assault or the conduct occurred? That's how you run an investigation. That's what we do in this country. We don't just say something because somebody's been accused of it and say, all right, fine, you're done. That's not how it works.
But that Conyers didn't have any investigation. He's been forced to resign by Democrats because of his behavior and because, as you point out,
elections coming up.
No, I thought I was going to go to her point, which is that apparently he used office money, taxpayer dollars, as hush money for a woman. Too. But that's not to say that this is comparable to what Roy Moore is.
I was not comparing them. I was simply saying there's the issue of sexual harassment and sexual assault, to whatever degree, is going to be a political topic in the 2018 midterms, and it will be interesting to see how Democrats handle it, and it will be interesting to see how Republicans handle it as well.
Okay, so Jesse, rain brilliance.
Okay, well, listen, he did the right thing. It took him a little while to get there. He was a lame duck and a sitting duck because he could have been blackmailed, too. And remember how the Democrats got here. First, they said he was iconic. Then they raised doubts about the accusers. Then they played the race card. So the guy was old. It was a safe seat. It's Congress. It's not a Senate seat. It's a lot easier to kick a guy out like that. But there's a lot of lessons here. The public will not stomach a sexual harassment settlement with taxpayer money. They just won't. Also, another takeaway, whenever you settle, especially more than one suit, you're always going to be assumed to be guilty in the court of public opinion. And every case is different. And in politics, you have a long leash to fight these allegations. In the private sector, one accusation, good night. And then I think, the bottom line, there's a lot of talented and very successful guys. We've known them. We've been around them, and they're deeply flawed. And it's very complicated, and it's very sad to see. And you feel sorry for the victims. You feel sorry for the people involved. But, it happens, and, it's not a good thing, and we shouldn't be celebrating it either.
There needs to be a retirement home. Yeah. There's so many of these guys. Where are they going? They just go off and they disappear. There needs to be a place for them where they could just for them.
Just for them.
Have a closed robe curfew at 10 p.m.
Oh, my God.
All righty. More drama from self-promoter LeVar Ball ahead on the 5.
Remember the dad who refused to thank President Trump for helping his son dodge punishment once he was accused of shoplifting in China? Mr. Trump called LeVar Ball an ungrateful fool. Now that, quote, fool, is pulling his son out of school. First, here's LiAngelo Ball in a new interview talking about what he did overseas.
We all went out one night, went through the malls, went to the Louis Vuitton store, and people started taking stuff, and then, me just not thinking and being with them, I took something too. I didn't realize till I got back to my hotel. I'm like, that was stupid. Sure enough, the next morning, the police came and got us.
LiAngelo was among 3 players suspended from the UCLA basketball team. Now, Papa isn't happy his son is benched, so he's yanked him out of the university. Here's why.
China already said, okay, he made a bad mistake. We're going to drop the charges. That's the punishment they gave him. Now we over here. Look, we got to serve some more punishment? He apologized. What is the long process for? We only went to UCLA, one and done, to play basketball. I'm going to get Jello in shape. We're going to do some other things, and he's going to be headed to the NBA.
Wow. Now, let me tell you something. I just think this dad, who it seems to me is like just, he is like a black Trump. He's just talking, selling stuff, selling wolf tickets. But why he would say this about his son, I don't get it, because I think the son was lucky to get out of jail in China.
Yeah.
So, do you want to start?
Where do you begin? Where do you begin? But it sounds like he's had some discussions with teams, or where he thinks his son's just going to go straight to the NBA.
But no, in fact, the NBA general managers, Kimberly, have said this kid's not an all-star. Remember, his brother, who plays for the Lakers, was an All-American.
Don't tell it to LeVar Ball, because if he says it, it's so ordained. I mean, I don't know. I felt bad for the kid. He's kind of sitting there like, whatever. What can he say? I think his dad's like running the show. And he's like the equivalent of like a stage mom, you know? Like, I don't know. And his like son is like in the pageant, you know? And he's like, this is what you're going to do.
Does this work out, Jesse? What do you think?
No, it doesn't. I mean, but this guy has more charisma in his pinky than I think most all of us. I love to watch him on television. He's fantastic. But now the rest of the country is getting to see what a wacko this guy really is. He's basically pulling his son out of UCLA so he doesn't have to suffer the consequences for stealing. So he's going to go one and done at another school? No, he's not. NBA scout says he's not a first-round, second-rounder. He's not even on the radar. Furthermore, the bloom is off the rose with the ball boys. The guy on the Lakers having a terrible year. He's really underperforming. This guy, they don't want to sign a family like this.
No.
This guy gets in front of the camera. He steals the limelight.
My God.
No owner is going to want to deal with this family. That's nothing but trouble.
The PR department's like, no, thank you. Do not have him come here.
Like Colin Kaepernick.
By the way, on that point, the Lakers had to change their policy about reporters talking to family and loved ones
Families
behind the basket. No, they call it the LeVar Ball rule.
On a more serious note, I think that this father needs to YouTube some videos, do some research, read about what it means to be in a Chinese prison for 10 years. And this is the reason why consequences are important, why consequences matter. For him to say that he was treated worse at UCLA than he would have been, than he was treated in China. He was looking at 10 years in prison in a communist country where they don't really care about your well-being. They don't care about human rights. And the idea that they are now being so arrogant and ignorant about what the consequences were going to be actually is pretty insulting to people who, I don't know, like Nobel Peace Prize winners' wives who have been in Chinese prisons for simply being a dissident in the government. I mean, there's a lot that goes on in China, and this kid's really, really, really lucky that he didn't get stuck there for 10 years.
Well, Katie makes such an important point, but I want to talk about silliness, Greg. And the silliness is that LeVar also sent a pair of sneakers, red, white, and blue, to President Trump. But he says the president hasn't thanked him.
They are kindred spirits.
Oh,
I'm going to defend the father. If you're majoring in molecular biology and you're suspended indefinitely from the lab, what do? You got to leave school. The father's honest. His son's only there to play basketball, and if he's not playing basketball, what's the point? Study? Please.
Right.
An indefinite suspension is, in effect, asking him to leave.
Wow. But what about, and I think lots of people on this panel said
What about a great education from
UCLA? Come on.
You're right.
Wait a second.
I'm from Berkeley. Berkeley is way better than UCLA. UCLA is like the basement school of UC. The UC system. You go to UCLA just for the weather. You go to Berkeley for the brains.
Okay, but let me just say, as a dad, it's important not to tell your kids it's okay to steal. That was wrong. You got to send some lessons. All right.
Point.
How young is too young to be on social media? Controversy over Facebook's new app for kids. It's coming up next.
Well, as if kids aren't already glued enough to their smartphones, Facebook is giving them more reason to be addicted to their devices. The social media giant is now targeting preteens with a new app called Messenger Kids. It requires parents of children under 13 to approve contacts so they can chat with their friends and doodle on pictures they send to one another. Facebook says the point of it is to provide a more controlled environment for kids who are already connecting with each other on their phones. But of course, there's always concern about safety when it comes to children. So I'm going to defer to the parents on this side of the table. As a kid who wasn't even allowed to watch MTV, this freaks me out a little bit. But it seems like they've put some things in place to make sure the kids are safe.
Yeah, I'm afraid my daughters are going to go on Facebook and write nasty things under my videos on my page.
No, anonymously.
That's my biggest fear. I don't want them on screens any more than they already are. They're already watching too much TV. I can't control it. They're on my phone. They're on everyone's phone. I don't like it. I want them to play outside and use their imagination. I think that's healthy. And it's a magnet for perverts. You know,
Hey.
can you get up there and pretend you're 13 and then you're really 45 and go on and start
According to
conversating?
Facebook, they have implemented a number of restrictions so that parents have to approve who the kids are talking to. The contacts have to be approved. The kids don't actually sign up for the account. It's through the parents. So essentially, it's just something on the parents' phone or iPad that they can
it's probably a bunch
get
of
into.
Russian bots or something like that.
Maybe that's
Blame it on the Russians.
always a collusion with the Russians.
Look, I think this is well-intentioned, right? I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see how it works out. There's not a lot of bugs in it in terms of, like Jesse says, people being able to breach it or get on there to use it for untoward, inappropriate purposes. So we have to watch out for that. But in general, parents have to monitor and have, I guess, like guides on there and to make sure and restrictions on a lot of things.
Juan,
your cable, too.
Are screens melting the brains of the youth? Is this why everyone hates millennials?
I don't think there's any question it changes the way your brain works and the way you're